Princess Diana's sister had spent years refusing to turn private grief into a public argument. Then, during the inquest into Diana's death, Lady Sarah McCorquodale was shown a photograph of three sisters laughing in the back of a car. Diana sat between Sarah and Jane, completely unguarded. For a moment, she was simply their younger sister again. Sarah was asked whether she remembered what had made them laugh. She did. And when Lady Sarah looked at that photograph, she was not trying to make an accusation about Camilla. She was remembering the Diana she had known before Charles, before palace life, and before her sister's marriage became crowded by another woman. But the more Sarah remembered, the harder it became to ignore what had changed. Her answer did not sound shocking. What it revealed about Camilla was, when the photograph was placed before Lady Sarah during the inquest, the courtroom saw a Diana it rarely encountered. She was sitting between Sarah and Jane in the back of a car, and all three sisters were leaning forward with laughter. Nothing was staged. The woman remembered around the world as the Princess of Wales looked like a younger sister sharing a joke. Lady Sarah McCorquodale had maintained her composure while giving evidence. Then she was asked whether she remembered what had made Diana laugh. The question reached beyond the legal proceedings and into a memory the courtroom could not see. Sarah's expression changed. "I'm afraid I can," she answered. The reply opened a larger memory. Sarah remembered Diana before the palace and before her marriage became a national spectacle. She remembered someone playful, affectionate, mischievous, and capable of making a car journey feel like an event. She also remembered how that laughter became less common after Diana entered royal life. Sarah was not a distant relative reconstructing Diana's life from newspaper reports. She was nearly 6 years older. She had known Diana as a child, watched her become a young woman, and remained close enough to hear private fears near the end of her life. More importantly, Sarah had known Prince Charles before Diana did. She had dated him briefly and later joked that she had acted as Cupid by introducing him to her younger sister. At the time, the remark sounded harmless. After the royal marriage collapsed, it carried a weight Sarah could never have anticipated. She had helped open the door through which Diana entered the monarchy. She then watched that marriage become crowded by the unresolved presence of Camilla. Sarah did not accuse Camilla with one explosive sentence. She simply described what she had witnessed. She knew Diana before Charles. She helped bring them together. Then she watched her sister's health, confidence, and sense of security change inside the marriage. Years later, when Sarah spoke under oath, those memories made it much harder to dismiss Diana's fear and isolation as stories created after her death. To understand what Sarah's silence contained, the story must return to the younger sister in that photograph. Before Charles, before Camilla, and before the title of princess began covering the person beneath it. Sarah's memories of Diana did not begin with royal life. Diana was born into one of Britain's oldest aristocratic families and grew up near the royal estate at Sandringham. Yet the people who knew her before the engagement did not remember a young woman obsessed with rank. She cleaned for friends, shared a London apartment, looked after children, and worked as a nursery assistant. Long before hospital wards and charity visits made her famous, she already knew how to make another person feel noticed. Inside the Spencer family, she was not an international symbol. She was the younger sister called Diana, sensitive, impulsive, funny, sometimes insecure, and full of practical jokes. Sarah and Jane knew the sound of her real laughter. They knew which expressions meant she was amused and which ones meant she was trying to appear composed. That knowledge later allowed them to see a difference the public initially mistook for royal maturity. To the public, marriage appeared to have transformed Diana into something greater. Her sisters could see that it was also taking something from her. She became noticeably thinner, and the confidence she showed in public did not always follow her home. Diana could still smile for a camera, but Sarah and Jane knew her well enough to recognize when the smile required effort. Diana's warmth survived. It emerged most clearly around children, people with AIDS, landmine victims, and patients others were afraid to touch. Yet public compassion did not protect her inside her own home. The more powerfully strangers responded to Diana, the more bewildering her private loneliness became. Millions could adore her, while the man she had married remained emotionally connected to someone else. When Diana later became the focus of that attention, Sarah supported the match. She could not see the full structure into which her sister was walking. Charles was older, experienced, and constrained by dynastic expectations. Diana was 19 when their courtship became serious. She believed emotional devotion would grow inside the arrangement. The palace saw suitability. The public saw romance. Sarah saw an opportunity for her sister to be loved. What Sarah could not fully see was that Charles had never made a clean emotional break from Camilla. Camilla did not suddenly enter the story after Charles and Diana became unhappy. She already held an important place in his life. The disturbing part is how quickly Diana began to sense that the previous relationship had followed Charles into their marriage. Sarah's part in the marriage began years before Diana became Charles's wife. Lady Sarah Spencer briefly dated Prince Charles in the late 1970s. Diana first encountered him while he was connected with her older sister. She was still a teenager, and Charles reportedly remembered her as lively, amusing, and full of energy. Nothing about that meeting suggested Diana would one day marry him, give birth to a future king, and become trapped inside the most painful royal triangle of the modern age. Sarah's own relationship with Charles ended. When Diana and Charles later became close, Sarah approved and described herself as the person who introduced them. "I'm Cupid," she said. It was the sort of family remark that could be repeated at weddings and anniversaries. But the sentence changed meaning as the marriage changed. Without realizing it, Sarah had helped connect her sister to a man who still had deep feelings for Camilla. Charles and Camilla had known each other before Diana entered his life. Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles, while Charles eventually chose a bride considered suitable for a future king. From the outside, the old relationship looked finished. Inside the lives of the people involved, it clearly was not. The engagement interview offered an early warning. Asked whether they were in love, Diana answered that they were. Charles added, "Whatever in love means." The words were treated as awkward humor, but Diana later remembered their effect. She had answered with certainty. He had answered with distance. The royal wedding in July 1981 appeared to erase those doubts. Hundreds of millions watched Diana enter St. Paul's Cathedral, and the scale of the ceremony made the marriage seem almost protected from ordinary failure. Yet nothing in the procession could decide whom Charles trusted, missed, or loved when the cameras were gone. The first clear evidence did not arrive through a public scandal. It appeared in small personal objects during the honeymoon. Diana noticed cufflinks associated with Camilla, reportedly marked with 2 intertwined letter C's. She also found a photograph of Camilla among Charles's possessions. These were not rumors invented after separation. They were reminders encountered when the marriage was only weeks old. Diana later described dreaming about Camilla during the honeymoon. The woman who was supposed to exist outside the new marriage had entered Diana's sleep. The fairy tale had barely begun, yet its bride already felt she was competing with a relationship that duty had interrupted but not erased. Only weeks into the marriage, Sarah's light-hearted claim that she had played Cupid no longer sounded quite so innocent. She had introduced Diana to Charles, But Charles had entered the marriage with feelings that had never been properly settled. When Charles and Diana left for their honeymoon, Diana expected their first real chance to be alone. Instead, she began noticing everything the wedding ceremony had concealed. Charles still wore the cufflinks connected with Camilla, and her photograph remained among his belongings. Diana was only 20 and newly married. She did not know how to raise those questions without sounding jealous, frightened, or ungrateful for the life the country believed she had been given. One object can be dismissed. A photograph can be explained. But Diana did not experience these discoveries separately. They formed a pattern around a name she already knew. Every reminder suggested that the marriage had not begun with a clean emotional boundary. Charles had married Diana, yet Camilla remained psychologically present. The public saw a radiant princess. Her family began seeing physical changes. Diana's weight fell sharply around the engagement and wedding period. She later spoke openly about bulimia and connected it to unhappiness, low self-worth, and the strain surrounding her marriage. Her condition was not evidence of vanity. It was a dangerous attempt to manage feelings that seemed impossible to express safely. Sarah understood eating disorders personally, which made Diana's decline especially alarming. She did not need a medical report to recognize that the problem was serious. She knew how quickly control over food could become connected to secrecy, shame, and fear. She also knew the woman beneath the shrinking figure, the sister who had once laughed without checking whether anyone was watching. Diana later called her bulimia a cry for help. With that knowledge, the polished photographs from the early marriage looked different. The gowns were hanging on a body changed by distress, and many of the smiles appeared while Diana felt unwanted in her own marriage. The palace continued presenting a successful union, while the young woman at its center was struggling to make anyone understand how badly she was hurting. Sarah watched from the position of a sister who had once dated Charles and encouraged Diana's match. That made the change uniquely painful. She knew the prince as a man capable of charm and companionship. She knew Diana as someone eager to love and be loved. What she witnessed after the wedding was not the union she had imagined. It was a young woman becoming smaller inside an institution that kept telling the world she had received everything. For several years, Diana kept trying to protect the family around William and Harry. But she was also reaching a limit. If remaining silent only protected the institution while her health continued to suffer, she would eventually have to tell someone what was happening. Diana did not leave when her suspicions began. William and Harry were still young, and she wanted to protect the family life she had imagined for them. She hugged her sons openly, took them to ordinary restaurants and amusement parks, and introduced them to experiences the monarchy often kept at a distance. Sarah had known that warmth in Diana since childhood. Now it became most visible in the way she raised her boys. Photographs from the period show a family performing unity. Charles and Diana stood together at engagements, traveled, and appeared beside their children. But the camera also recorded distance. Their bodies turned away. Expressions tightened. The excited young woman from the engagement appeared increasingly guarded. To strangers, the change could look like dignity. To Sarah and Jane, it looked like their sister becoming sad. By the late 1980s, the relationship between Charles and Camilla had resumed its intimate form. Diana no longer faced only reminders from the past. She believed the emotional competition was active inside the present. The question was not whether the royal couple had difficulties. It was whether the marriage still contained a space in which Diana could be the chosen partner. The more beloved Diana became, the stranger her position grew. Camilla could point to the crowds, the title, and the children as proof that Diana possessed everything. But Diana's complaint was never that she lacked applause. It was that the man beside her appeared to reserve his deepest emotional allegiance for someone else. Eventually, uncertainty became more painful than confrontation. At a private birthday gathering in 1989, Diana approached Camilla directly. She later described feeling terrified. She did not enter the conversation with the confidence of a princess commanding a subject. She entered as a wife, demanding recognition from the woman she believed occupied the center of her husband's private life. Diana told Camilla that she knew what was happening. The statement mattered because it ended the possibility that polite social contact could disguise the triangle. According to Diana's account, Camilla answered by referring to Diana's public admiration and her two beautiful sons. What more could she want? What Diana wanted was much simpler than the life around her suggested. She wanted to feel that her husband had chosen her. The confrontation did not restore the marriage, but it ended Diana's willingness to pretend that she did not understand it. In time, she would describe the situation to the public in one sentence that permanently connected Camilla with the collapse. When Diana finally stood before Camilla, she did not arrive with a prepared speech. "I know what's going on," she recalled saying. Diana was frightened, but she no longer wanted to pretend she could not see what was happening inside her own marriage. Camilla was no longer a photograph, a pair of cufflinks, or a recurring fear. She was standing directly in front of her. Diana's version of Camilla's response was equally revealing. Camilla reportedly reminded her that she had two wonderful boys and the love of the world. The logic treated public privilege as compensation for private betrayal. Diana had the visible rewards. Camilla appeared to possess the relationship Diana wanted from Charles. That exchange helps explain what Sarah had watched happen to her sister. Diana was not fighting an abstract rivalry created by newspapers. She believed she was trying to protect her marriage. Camilla had been close to Charles before Diana arrived and remained close after the wedding. By the time the two women confronted each other, the triangle had existed for years. Charles later admitted adultery, saying the relationship occurred after his marriage had become irretrievably broken. That admission ended any credible claim that Diana had imagined the connection. Debate remained over timing, responsibility, and the causes of the breakdown, but the triangle itself was real. The royal institution required careful language. Diana eventually chose the opposite. In November 1995, she sat before television cameras for the Panorama interview and spoke as a wife rather than a palace representative. Asked about the marriage, she gave the sentence that permanently fixed Camilla's role in public memory. "There were 3 of us in this marriage," Diana said, "so it was a bit crowded." The line endured because everyone immediately understood it. Diana did not need to use Camilla's name. After years of reports, private confrontations, and Charles's own admission, the identity of the third person was clear. The interview also connected the triangle to Diana's loneliness, bulimia, and doubts about her future. She was not exposing an affair merely to win public sympathy. She was explaining the emotional conditions behind changes viewers had already watched happen to her. For Sarah, the interview brought the story back to the introduction she once described so proudly. The sister she had helped bring into Charles's life was now telling millions that the marriage had never given her the security she expected. By the time Diana sat down for the Panorama interview, years of polite silence had changed nothing. The royal family still expected personal damage to remain hidden behind public duty. Diana finally described what the appearances, tours, and carefully managed photographs had concealed. Camilla's name did not need to be spoken. By 1995, the reference was unmistakable. Diana had confronted her. Charles had already acknowledged adultery publicly the previous year. The public understood who the third person was, and from that moment, any future royal rehabilitation of Camilla would have to exist beside Diana's sentence. The marriage ended formally in 1996. Diana lost the style of Her Royal Highness, but remained Princess of Wales and the mother of William and Harry. Outside the marriage, she appeared to be rebuilding. Her humanitarian work became more independent, and her campaign against landmines demonstrated that she could command international attention without standing beside Charles. British and French investigations examined the crash, and the inquest ultimately returned a verdict of unlawful killing caused by the grossly negligent driving of Henri Paul and the pursuing paparazzi. Sarah's importance lies not in proving a hidden conspiracy. It lies in confirming under oath that Diana was sharing private fears with her family shortly before her death. 2 days before the fatal crash, Diana called Sarah from the Al Fayed yacht. Sarah later testified that Diana believed the vessel was being monitored by Mohammed Al Fayed. Diana was also upset about a newspaper article related to her landmine work and appeared dissatisfied with Dodi Fayed's response. Sarah concluded that the relationship might not last much longer. That is why Sarah's testimony matters to the title. When Diana described Camilla as the third person, critics could dismiss her as wounded or strategic. Sarah supplied a longer family memory. She knew Diana before royal life, observed the deterioration during the marriage, and heard the insecurity that remained after the divorce. Sarah's sworn evidence did not create a new scandal. It preserved the private Diana behind the headlines and showed that the insecurity did not disappear when the marriage ended. When Diana called Sarah from outside Britain, neither sister knew it would be their last conversation. Sarah could not see Diana's face, but she recognized the emotion in her voice. Diana believed the yacht was being bugged. She was distressed by the landmine article and did not think speaking to Dodi would help. Sarah finished the call, believing the romance celebrated by the press was already weakening. Days later, Diana died in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. The news ended every unresolved conversation at once. There would be no return home, no private explanation, and no opportunity for the Spencer sisters to help Diana decide what came next. Sarah and Jane traveled to Paris with Charles to accompany their sister's body back to Britain. They made the journey beside the man Diana had married and the father of her sons. Whatever anger or regret existed between the families had to wait. Their immediate task was to bring Diana home. At the funeral, Jane delivered a reading. Sarah also participated and later became closely involved in managing Diana's estate and memorial fund. Their brother, Charles Spencer, delivered the eulogy that promised Diana's blood family would help protect William and Harry. The Spencers' response was not a public campaign of revenge. It was a commitment to preserve a sister and mother whose identity could otherwise be consumed by royal history. But private restraint had a consequence. As Charles and Camilla gradually appeared together, married in 2005, and moved toward public acceptance, Diana's family rarely supplied a competing narrative. Charles and Camilla could shape their public life going forward, but Diana's own words and Sarah's memories remained part of the record. The contrast reached its most powerful form in 2023. Charles was crowned at Westminster Abbey, and Camilla was crowned beside him as Queen. The woman Diana had identified as the third person now occupied the ceremonial position Diana once appeared destined to hold. Sarah never needed to turn her grief into a permanent public feud. She could remain civil, protect William and Harry, and still remember exactly what Diana had endured inside the marriage. Camilla's crown confirmed how completely her public position had changed. It could not change what Diana had said about the years that came before it. When Westminster Abbey filled for the coronation in 2023, Sarah had already lived through a very different day inside the same building. In 1997, Diana's funeral had brought her sons, siblings, former husband, and millions of mourners together in grief. 26 years later, the abbey became the setting for Charles and Camilla's coronation. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Diana entered royal life believing she might eventually stand beside Charles as queen. Instead, she died at 36 after describing a marriage occupied by 3 people. Camilla, the woman connected to Charles before and during that marriage, ultimately stood beside him wearing the crown. For Sarah, the ceremony completed a painful reversal. She had known Diana before Charles, introduced them, and watched her playful sister become thinner, lonelier, and increasingly distressed. She did not need to attack Camilla publicly. The surviving evidence already carried the judgment. The honeymoon reminders, Diana's declining health, her confrontation with Camilla, Charles's admission, and the unforgettable panorama statement. Sarah's restraint kept Diana's testimony at the center. The coronation changed Camilla's title, but not the honeymoon discoveries, the confrontation, Charles's admission, or their effect on Diana's health. Sarah remembered who had paid the emotional cost. What Lady Sarah McCorquodale finally confirmed about Camilla came from a position no palace advisor could share. She knew Charles before the marriage and remembered Diana before the world transformed her into a princess. She watched her playful, affectionate sister become anxious, painfully thin, and increasingly isolated. Sarah also knew that Camilla's presence had not appeared only after the marriage failed. Diana discovered reminders during the honeymoon, confronted Camilla directly, and eventually described her as the third person in the marriage. In Diana's own account, that divided loyalty became connected to rejection, bulimia, and the painful belief that she had been chosen for a royal role without receiving the love she expected. Sarah did not need to attack Camilla publicly. Diana had already left a clear account of what she experienced. The cufflinks, the photograph, the confrontation, Charles's admission, and the interview in which she described a marriage shared by 3 people. Sarah remembered the sister behind the title, the young woman who loved children, trusted Charles, and entered marriage believing she had truly been chosen. Camilla became queen, but that did not replace Diana's version of the marriage. Diana experienced Camilla as the woman who remained emotionally present between herself and Charles. Sarah knew Diana before that marriage, watched what happened inside it, and heard her fears afterward. Camilla received the title Diana was once expected to hold. But Diana had already spoken, and Sarah remembered.